welcome to another Win Daily Show. My name is Michael Rasile. I got my man Ghost here with me, and we are looking ahead to the 8-5 NBA slate on Thursday. Ghost man, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Michael. Yourself?
Oh, it's Wednesday. 8-5 is Wednesday. I guess I was doing pretty well, but here we are, 23 seconds in. Can't even figure out my days, but that's fine. I'm okay with this kind of Groundhog's Day because I get NBA all friggin' day, and I've just been watching it constantly. Sometimes it's on mute because I'm on phone calls or my fiance's on phone calls, but man, I've been watching all of it. It was great watching the Bucks lose, watching the Heat do what they're doing right now. And Kelly Olynyk, if anyone was paying attention yesterday, our man Ghost may have called Kelly Olynyk having a monster game, and he is absolutely in the process of having a monster game. So we're excited to see what he ends up with, but we're very, very excited about that. But as I said, we're here for the 8-5 slate. I got that part right, but it is the Wednesday 8-5 slate. So we are going to be looking ahead. We got 6 games again, which is going to be a lot of fun. We're starting to see a bunch of teams start to play back-to-backs. So this is going to take a little bit more effect. We're starting to also unfortunately see a lot of injuries. Jaren Jackson Jr. for the Memphis Grizzlies, unfortunately, is out again, which now he tore his meniscus, I think, which really sucks, man. You never want to see that, especially in like this weird, hey, you get 8 games, just stay healthy kind of thing. And unfortunately, it did not happen, but we'll be excited to see him next year. I can promise everybody that him and Ja are going to be a force for a while. So we're excited for that. But Ghostman, let's hop into this a little bit. Let me pull up our screen here so that we can see. And there we go. I figured it out. I've only been doing this thing for like 6-7 months now. So as we can see, we have a bunch of games here: Memphis, Utah, Philly, Washington, Denver, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and the Lakers, Toronto, and the Magic and the Brooklyn Nets, the winners of the Brooklyn Nets versus Milwaukee Bucks game, going up against the Boston Celtics. So as we did yesterday, we're pretty much just going to run right down these games. Ghost is going to give you some great plays from each of them. We're going to look at some of the top guys. We're going to look at some value. Then we're going to see if there's any punt plays. But we always like to look at those Vegas totals and those odds to see what they think, because let's be honest, Ghost, they're much smarter than us, and there's really nothing we could do about that. So this first game, Memphis, Utah, starts at 2:35 Eastern time, has a over-under of 225, and the Utah Jazz are favored by, it looks like, about 4 to 4.5 points. So, Ghostman, let's just pop this game on right here. Where are you looking in this game? As I said, Jaren Jackson Jr. unfortunately is injured. He will be out. So what does that mean when we're starting to look at some plays here?
The first thing I wanted to talk about was just the game environment of this game. You'll see that our whole NBA team over at Win Daily Sports really cares about things such as team's defensive rating, their offensive rating, and most notably the pace at which both of these teams play. And typically, Utah over the years, including this season, have been a bottom 10 team in the NBA in terms of pace ranking, meaning they don't exactly like to run the floor all that quick. They like to slow the game down and really handle their possessions carefully, move the ball around, and utilize the full shot clock if they can. But whenever they're in what we call pace-up spots, where they're facing a team that's not only playing at a faster pace than them, but most notably in the top 10, like a team like Memphis, Utah actually plays more into the opposing team style than they do towards their own. Most notably centering their offense as usual around star guard Donovan Mitchell. So he's a guy that likes to get up and down the court with extreme speed, and look for Utah and Memphis to really push the pace in this one. So this is definitely going to be a game where typically I like to not favor the early games too much, depending on the slate. I know a lot of ownership tends to flock towards these early games. People like to see their lineups in the green right away, right? So ownership is typically heavier on early games than the later ones, no matter what the slate is. But this is a slate where you're definitely going to want action on this game, and it starts right at the top. You got Ja Morant going up against Donovan Mitchell. Specifically for DraftKings, Ja is a little bit expensive now. He's no longer in the price range where I feel I don't want to say extremely comfortable, but rather comfortable playing him. Sitting at like in between 7,500. He still has that potential to hit not only 6 times his value, but even 7, 8 if he's closer towards $7,000. Mm-hmm. But sitting at 8,000, he's not the player like like what we saw Luka Doncic do, dropping 30, 20, and 10 there. And
Mm,
he's not going to eclipse that 70-point mark or really take our lineups all the way to the top. So I would rather pivot towards the star guard of the Utah Jazz for $500 cheaper, that being Donovan Mitchell. Ja Morant will most likely accumulate more assists, maybe even pick up a steal or two more, but defensive stats are a little bit less important on DraftKings than FanDuel. They're worth a point less. I mean, 2 points for a steal is still 2 points, so obviously you can't take them out of consideration altogether. But Donovan Mitchell is a guy that's typically a player that's scoring dependent, and in order for him to hit his ceiling, he's gonna have to score a ton. But this is exactly the type of matchup that he's able to do that in. And then, so right at the top, it starts with Ja and Donovan Mitchell. And then our value play here in this game is going to be Brandon Clarke. Expect some extremely high ownership on Brandon Clarke tomorrow. Already with Jaren Jackson Jr. out, he's going to be popping no matter where you're looking. And even before JJJ was out, Brandon Clarke was drawing ownership simply because Jonas Valanciunas has seen his minutes decline a bit. So now that Jaren Jackson Jr. is confirmed out with that torn meniscus, Brandon Clarke will most likely be the one to see the not only the bump in minutes, but he'll most likely get to start alongside J Val. So he's definitely a great value piece, not only for your cash games, but GPP as well.
I love it. I love it. And it's always good. We need to have those value plays because that's the way we fit all those expensive guys in, as we'll see. Joel Embiid, not too cheap. We'll see what happens with the Lakers game, but that
Yeah.
Boston game as well in Toronto, I'm sure those guys are going to be priced up a little bit. So a couple really nice plays there. Take advantage of them because, again, Ghost is he's usually pretty right when he does this stuff. So let's hop over to the Philly and Washington game. We have the 76ers, I guess, technically on the road against the Washington Wizards. They are currently favored by 10.5 points. So Vegas thinks this game is going to be a blowout, but the over under of 233. So a little bit higher than that first game there for us. So how do you think, again, with a 10.5 point favorite, with, as you said, some of these early games are going to get a little bit higher ownership. How do you see this one playing out, and who are some of the guys that you're really looking to punch into a couple lineups here?
The spread doesn't worry me all that much, simply because I believe Philly's sitting in that 6 seed right this second, and they're chasing for that 5 spot. I mean, obviously, like what you said, there's no home court advantage, so it doesn't really matter whether they get 5 or 4 in this case. But I definitely think they rather see the Boston Celtics than they would the Miami Heat. So I'm pretty sure they're going to be keeping a close eye on the matchups that are going on as we speak. But Philly's in a smash spot here. Every single game that Washington has played in this season, the over-under has been one of, if not the highest on the entire NBA slate. And it's absolutely no different here on this one, right? So right at the top, Joel Embiid is by far the guy that you want out of this game. 10,400 is a pretty penny to pay. But again, I think Philly kind of experimented with the whole let's space the floor out and run our offense through guys like Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, even Shake Milton got more touches than I was comfortable with, given the level of exposure that I had to Joel Embiid when they played San Antonio the other day. But it simply didn't work out for them. They looked awful. I mean, Ben Simmons is not a guy that's a spot up shooter, to say the least, if I put it into kind terms
Yeah.
here. But I mean, Tobias Harris can shoot the rock pretty well, and Shake Milton as well. But Al Horford is not the Al Horford that he once was in Atlanta and even in Boston, right? So they kind of had some experiment going on last game where whenever Jakob Poeltl was on the floor, they would throw Embiid out there, and Greg Popovich, coach of the San Antonio Spurs, was doing the same thing, and Embiid just absolutely smashed him. I mean, I'm pretty sure he put up I think it was 50 something FanDuel points in under 30 minutes played, right? So he's a guy that's going to get you over 1.3, 1.4, some nights even 1.5 fantasy points per minute here. And he's a guy that screams efficiency, right? So as long as he's going to see the floor, he's a guy that's going to be in a smash spot in almost every matchup. He's virtually matchup proof. And there's absolutely no chance that guys like Rui Hashimura and Thomas Bryant, even Mo Wagner off the bench are going to be able to guard Joel Embiid. I mean, they're no Rudy Gobert in the paint. With no disrespect over to that Washington front court, of course.
Of course.
So Joel Embiid is going to be the guy that I'm targeting here, hoping that the organization kind of figures it out that we have one of the best players in the league on our roster, and it's about time that we start playing him 34, 36 minutes a night and running our offense through him. In terms of a value play, Shake Milton is a guy that has been getting the start, but hasn't really been doing all that much with it. I was high on him coming into the NBA bubble that we have the pleasure of now watching every day, like what you said during the day. So, but he just hasn't done as much as I would like him to do with all the minutes and all the touches that he's getting. So I'm actually going to go a little bit lower here and go to one of my favorite targets in Ish Smith. So Ish Smith is sitting there at 4,800. I'm not sure if it's purely from an analytical standpoint or whatnot, if FanDuel and DraftKings both know something that we don't, but Ish Smith's price refuses to come up. Whether that means that he's starting like he was last game, or he's putting up 5, 6, 7 times his value off the bench, like what he typically does, his price is always sitting there around $5,000. And at 4,800, it kind of sucks that he's not dual guard eligible, meaning you could play him at point guard and shooting guard. But he's a guy that I've pretty much played almost, if not every day that Washington was on the slate, and he's been absolutely crushing value. He's sharing minutes with Shabazz Napier, of course, but again, Ish Smith is the guy there that's extremely efficient and really takes advantage of his one-on-one matchups. Typically, I would like him to come off the bench here, surprisingly. I know a lot of guys in NBA DFS like to target starters mostly, but if Ish is coming off the bench and seeing guys like Alec Burks and backups on Philadelphia, I much rather that matchup than have him going up against. I mean, Shake Milton is no excellent defender, but of course, if Ben Simmons switches onto him, that would be a massive issue. I don't foresee that happening. Ben Simmons is much bigger than Ish Smith, so it would kind of be a waste of Ben Simmons on the defensive end of the court. But I'd rather not take that chance. I'd rather have Ish Smith coming off the bench. But even if he is starting, I do prefer him to Shabazz Napier, simply not only because of price. I mean, $600 is not that much of a difference, but it's more so about efficiency, and he's a guy that plays. I don't want to say he plays similarly to Russell Westbrook. I do not want to put Ish Smith into the category of Russell Westbrook. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But my point that I'm about to make is that Ish Smith is a guard that dishes the rock. He could score, and most importantly, he could rebound. So it's something that's extremely key to our success in NBA DFS. Ish Smith is going to be the value play that I want to point out here in this game.
I love it, man. I love it. I mean, yeah, especially if you're going to pay up for Joel Embiid, you're going to have to find a bunch of value all over the place and really need to pay down in a couple different spots. So that is the Philly-Washington game. We'll see how that one goes. We'll now move over to the Denver-San Antonio game. Let's see. I don't think we have a line for this one. Let me just check. We do not.
I don't believe,
I think we're waiting
it's not out yet.
Yeah. We're waiting on a couple pieces of injury news on the Denver front. A couple guys still out. We'll see what exactly happens there. So, I mean, not knowing the line, not knowing the over-under, I'm sure there's still a couple dudes in this game that you're liking, especially considering San Antonio's been putting up some points here in the bubble, which I think is a little surprising to some people that watch NBA. I mean, they're not really a shooting three kind of team, but man, they just put up 130 points the other night and lost on a three-pointer, a dagger by Shake Milton, if I'm not mistaken. So talk to me a little bit about this game. I mean, Denver's looked real weird so far, and San Antonio has as well, just in the opposite direction. So how are you considering this game? How many players and where are you looking to grab some guys?
I was kind of surprised to see, given Denver's rotation, I thought they would take it more of a cautious approach with Nikola Jokic, to say the least, but it seems like they're essentially running this guy into the ground, trying to pick up some wins here. And he's a guy that's sitting at 9,700. I wouldn't mind pivoting off Embiid, depending on who's drawing more ownership as we get closer to lock here. Nikola Jokic is a guy that he's a triple-double threat every time he takes the court. He could pass better than most point guards in the league, let alone he's the best passing big man in the league, that's for sure. But he's a guy that would be a great pivot off somebody like Joel Embiid. So if you're a player that enters multiple lines, not even necessarily one of those 150 max tournaments, but even if you're going into a 3 max, I'm completely cool with running, let's say, two Joel Embiid and one Jokic, one Embiid, one Jokic, and one non Embiid slash Jokic lineups. Something to that manner is definitely something that's going to be interesting tomorrow, specifically on DraftKings, given their proximity and prices, and you do get the $700 savings there with Jokic over Embiid. Another player that's going to be popular, probably given his latest outburst, is Michael Porter Jr. He's a guy that's extremely talented, one of the most highly touted prospects coming out of college, coming out of high school and college and whatnot. So he slipped into the draft to Denver. I thought that was an excellent pick on draft day, and he's a guy that I'm hoping next season actually comes back fully healthy and we could get a full 82 games out of MPJ. But in this spot here at 6,200, it's a little more expensive than what I'm comfortable paying for. Over on FanDuel, we're not going to be covering FanDuel today, but when he went off in their last game, he was sitting there at 4,100. In a spot like that, I mean, it makes sense to take a shot on him. And I feel like nearly the entire industry was frustrated because when everyone was on him in the first game, he not only got into a fight with the coach. I mean, not a physical fight, but they got into some verbal altercations there on the sideline, and it didn't look too pretty. His shots weren't knocking down, and ultimately he took down a lot of lineups and dragged them down throughout the day. And then when the industry kind of comes off him, he ends up doing what he did last game, right? So I feel like people are going to take the wait and see approach here with Michael Porter Jr. Kind of play him here and there sporadically, but I'm most likely going to be underweight compared to the field. The key injury news that we're waiting for here is Jamal Murray, and I feel like that's why we don't have the over under yet. Will Barton and Gary Harris are both already ruled out, dealing with some serious injuries there, and they probably want to keep them healthy for playoffs as much as possible. And I feel like Denver would take the cautious side here and continue to sit out Jamal Murray. Like we were speaking about before we got on here, is that he did feel a pop in his hamstring, and he was struggling walking around and limping around and shoot around, right? So if he sits out, you can go back to these value guards. If we scroll down, we have guys like Monte Morris, guys like Craig, players of that manner, and even Jeremy Grant. If you're not an MPJ believer, it means Jeremy Grant's going to get some more minutes, right? So Denver value and San Antonio value just the same too, given both teams' thin rotations are something that's going to be interesting here. But given the pace of this game, my top target would most likely be Nikola Jokic, and then I'll probably have some sprinkles, if I could put it that way, of both San Antonio value and Denver value. My top plays being, like we just said, Jeremy Grant, Craig, and from the San Antonio side, you can go back to a guy like Keldon Johnson, who should be continuing to see a ton of minutes on the wing there, along with Lonnie Walker, of course.
A little Lonnie Walker as well. And yeah, again, I mean, that's starting this build out a little bit. It definitely leaves you with some room to play with in those last couple players, depending on who you want to put in there. And I think that's the most important part of this game. Yeah, we do have to wait for that injury news, and that's always the thing about NBA DFS. You have to be in front of your computer when that news comes out because that will affect your lineup. And the nice thing about DraftKings is they are allowing us to do a lot of late swap, which means if you put that lineup in time for the 2:30 game, and you have someone like Jamal Murray in, or you don't, and then you see he is going to be healthy, you then can go back and fix some of that and put that in as well, which I think is very important. So let's move on to this 6:30 game, another game we do not have a line or total for. It is the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Los Angeles Lakers, who have just clinched the number 1 seed as of yesterday, 2 days ago, whenever that was, when they played the Jazz. And they actually screwed with one of our bets. All they had to do was take that layup. We would have won some more money, but it is what it is. I'm not too angry about it. So looking at this slate, we don't really know A, if, or B, how much any of these Lakers starters are going to play, namely, obviously, LeBron and Anthony Davis. I don't know, man. This seems like a spot where I'm not going to try and take too many Lakers. Definitely going to be on the Thunder a little bit more, considering what Chris Paul and SGA have been able to do recently, which has been a lot of fun to watch. But you tell me, you're the expert, man. I'm just here to have a good time. What? How do you feel about this game, and where are you looking for some of those plays to come from?
No, I couldn't have said it better myself. You know what I mean? So right at the top, you have two of, if not the two best players in the league, right there, and LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And I mean, I'm gonna be underweight to say the least on both of them, but at the same time, it does present a leverage spot in those large field tournaments where if you want to take a risk on one of your entries to say, hey, what if LeBron actually does get a full 36 and he breaks the slate? I'm all for it, but in your main lineups in three max tournaments and single entries, I'm going to be staying away from both of them simply because I see this playing out into two scenarios. Number one would be we get the news well before lock, and that one or if not both of them are going to be sitting out due to quote unquote load management. But of course, it's NBA DFS, and we all know we are not going to get that news before lock. And it's the Lakers who, if they play at 6:30 Eastern, they somehow find a way to release their lineup at 7:30 p.m. Eastern because they do not want us to play them in NBA DFS, right? So I feel like it's going to be scenario number two where that if they are ruled out after lock, I mean, obviously there's nothing we could do about it after late swap. So that's where where both of them fading both of them in virtually almost every entry is it comes into play. But if they do end up playing, I could kind of see a Milwaukee Giannis situation where both him and Chris Middleton and just ended up sitting out the second half. I mean, Giannis was going to work simply because Brooklyn somehow stayed in that game and actually ended up winning. But so Giannis got to see more minutes, and he didn't do too bad for a guy considering he only played one half. But I could definitely see LeBron or Anthony Davis or even both either number one sitting out this game altogether or simply playing maybe 15 to 20 minutes just to stay fresh, and then sitting on the bench, kind of encouraging their teammates on the sidelines. So I'll be looking elsewhere other than this game. A couple OKC guys do interest me. Chris Paul is a tad expensive for my liking, similarly what I was saying with Jean Morant. Chris Paul is even more so affected by that in the sense that he doesn't score as much as he used to earlier in his career. He's more of a facilitator out there and more of a distributor with SGA dominating that backcourt, of course. So 8,000 is a little bit much to pay for Chris Paul, but again, most people are going to be thinking that, right? So it does present itself as a decent leverage spot when you're multi-entering or even in a three max. You know what I mean? Why not take at least one and throw it on Chris Paul? And for all those people that love narratives out there in NBA DFS, we all know the industry loves us a nice narrative. Chris Paul does have the banana boat crew connection to LeBron, right? So what better way than to wake up to a gift the next morning with LeBron cheering on Chris Paul, right? So you could definitely sprinkle in some Chris Paul. He's definitely not going to be in my main lineup, but if you want to take a shot or two, I'm all for it. If LeBron and AD both sit out, SGA is going to be a guy that I'm going to target heavily along with Gallinari. The Lakers play very stout defense. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league, along with Milwaukee, who very possibly could see each other in the NBA Finals. But if both AD and LeBron are sitting out, SGA and Gallo are going to have way more room than they anticipated to put up some points, and they're not overly priced. SGA sitting at 6,700 is something that really jumps out to me, and Gallo a little much less so, but he's a guy that's a very streaky shooter. If he gets hot from deep and this game ends up turning to Danny Green and Dion Waiters kind of waving their arms in the air, pretending like they're playing defense, Gallo could kind of run to the corner and just start dropping threes like there's no tomorrow, right? So SGA would be my target in this game if and only if LeBron and Anthony Davis are sitting out. And Gallo would be more of a MME play in those kind of 150 max tournaments. Down towards the value, if LeBron sits out, someone's got to play point guard. I mean, already they're, with no disrespect to Alex Caruso, they're pretty much without a true point guard on the roster right now. I feel like the closest thing they have to a point guard without LeBron is probably Rajon Rondo, but of course he's out. So one of these guys is going to have to run point, and it really wouldn't surprise me to see Dion Waiters sitting there at 3,500 kind of show off his skills and not only let the Lakers know that they made the right move by signing him, but kind of prepare himself to be a little bit more involved in the rotation in the playoffs than what I think the Lakers front office were thinking when they signed him, right? So he's by far playing better than J.R. Smith, and he's been getting a lot more touches, more usage, and he's seeing arguably double, if not more, minutes than J.R. Smith is. Dion Waiters is a guy that if LeBron sits out, I wouldn't be surprised to see him slot into the starting lineup and do some work here for our NBA DFS lineups.
I love it, man. I love it. And yeah, I mean, somebody has to play point guard. If it's not LeBron, we know he pretty much runs that team. And again, no disrespect to Alex Caruso. He made an incredible play against the Clippers the other night, but not quite the guy that we're going to put all our eggs in that basket. Moving on to the Toronto Orlando game. Let us see here. There is, yes, we do have a spread. Toronto -5 with an over-under of 224. So not super, super high. We've seen a couple more already on this slate that are a little bit higher than that 224.5. But quickly here, Ghost Man, give me a couple plays from this game, because that Brooklyn Boston game, that's the one I might want. No, I'm kidding. Let's talk about this game. What do you got for me, man?
As of right now, I'm not going to be looking at this game all that much. Being in Canada, I watch a ton of Raptors games, if not all of them, and they're a team that doesn't necessarily push the pace, if I could say so. They can match up against teams like the Pelicans, who really like to play fast, and Memphis that we mentioned earlier, and they can match up with a style like that. But if they're playing their style of game, they're not going to really run up and down the court with guys like Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, of course, right? So Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry can still get up and down there pretty quick, and OG Anunoby is a severely underrated player in transition and as a 3-and-D wing, but playing against Orlando, who also likes to play slowly, this over/under is high compared to the season. I mean, it's relatively low for NBA bubble season, but
yeah, right.
But for a typical Toronto Orlando game, if this was in the month of January, you probably would have seen this game being rather than being at 224.5, 225.5, depending on which book you're using, it would have most likely been closer to the 210 mark, right? So we can't necessarily forget that either. We can't just think every game in the NBA bubble is going to be like what it's being right now, and their prices are high, man. Like just looking at the top three targets, and I'm going to throw in a fourth in there just because I love what Fred VanVleet does on the court every single time he takes it. But Siakam at 88, Kyle Lowry at 84, Vooch at 81, and VanVleet at 77. Those are some really steep prices to pay, considering, I mean, think about what we said with Ja Morant being expensive at 8,000. Do I really want to pay nearly 9 for Pascal Siakam? Right now, I'm not comfortable in doing so. I much rather, if you're looking at the two main guards in this game, it would be Kyle Lowry or Fred VanVleet. Give me Donovan Mitchell and his matchup against Memphis for 200, or even more cheaper than Kyle Lowry, $200 cheaper than Fred VanVleet any day of the week. I'll take Donovan Mitchell on a slate like this, that's for sure. Guys like Aaron Gordon, he could pop at any time, but he does have a tough matchup on the wing. Whether he's facing Siakam or OG. Jonathan Isaac, unfortunately, went down with another injury that was really sad to see. I'm a big Jonathan Isaac fan, so Aaron Gordon's the man on the wing now, and he's drawing all the attention, right? So depending on who Nick Nurse wants to put on him, whether it's Siakam or OG, he'll get the matchup that he wants out of that, and that usually leads to Aaron Gordon throwing up a dud, right? So at 7,200, Aaron Gordon is not really in my player pool as of right now. Of course, things can change tomorrow, but right now he's not somebody that I'm too interested in. Even if you look at the value plays here, Evan Fournier is probably the guy that sticks out in that 5,500 range kind of thing. He's a guy that's extremely volatile, right? So he's somebody that if you look at what he did in his last game, it was an extreme dud, whereas other games he could put up 40 plus, right? So he's somebody that I'm not too interested in as of right now. Neither am I interested in guys like Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka.
Yeah, this seems like a game that we're going to fade a little bit. Again, pay attention to the news because you never know who's going to be in, who's going to be out. That will affect things. So also make sure to hop into the Win Daily Sports Discord because we talk about all of it over there. We help you with your roster construction. We help you make a lot of money. Now, moving on to this final game, we have the Brooklyn Nets who just defeated the Milwaukee Bucks. I bet everybody had that up against the Boston Celtics. There is no spread. There is no line to this game yet. But if I'm a betting man, which I am, I think it's going to be still very heavy into the Boston favor on this one. So, looking at this one, where are we looking? How do you feel about Jason Tatum? Is there any other plays here? Are you going to try and wait and see what the rest of the Nets lineup comes out? Are you going to play any of the Nets ever? How do you feel about this one, Ghost?
I mean, I was talking to the guys in Discord as usual. I was in there virtually all morning, and I was pretty much telling them I feel like the Brooklyn Nets were a trap, and I mean they did okay. They weren't a complete bust, but guys like Karooks and other players who were drawing in at 30, 40, 50, 60+% ownership. I was like, man, that's a hard fade for me, and so far so good. Looking at my lineups right now, they're guys that were extremely high owned, and they did okay. They hit 5 times their value. Some hit to 6, and I pretty much told the guys make sure the main piece that you want there is probably a guy like TLC, and he actually ended up being the best play
Yeah,
of the bunch, right?
huge
So
game, yeah.
if you're looking on a team like Brooklyn where they're virtually playing. I don't really know how to put this lightly, but they're playing a team of some lesser known players. I guess we could put it that way politely.
Very nice, Ghost.
You don't want to necessarily go all in. Let's not forget that these guys are not in an NBA rotation for a reason. So don't go overly crazy with the value that's over there. And to be honest with you, I don't really define them as value when you have guys like Johnson sitting at 6,100. That to me is not a value play.
Hmm.
And when you have, I mean, he's by far not one of my favorite plays on the slate. But if you look at Marcus Smart, that's only $400 cheaper. I would rather take Marcus Smart in the DFS lineup for $400 more than Johnson on any given day, right? So I'm going to be preaching the same message here. Do not go overly crazy with this Brooklyn value, no matter who they're playing. Boston is going to be on a back-to-back, right? So expect them to be not necessarily exhausted. I mean, these guys haven't played in who knows how many months. So on one hand, you can make the argument that they're slightly out of shape, but on the other hand, you can say that they're well rested, right? So and their team is fairly young, right? So Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, even Gordon Hayward's getting up there, but he's not exactly 45 years old. You know what I mean? So Boston, they are coming on a back-to-back, but it's not like they're going to be absolutely gassed. That being said, Brooklyn is somebody that I'm going to take the wait and see approach, and thankfully, it's the last game on the slate because we have the luxury of late swap on both of our favorite sites, of course. So just wait and see. That would be the advice that I could say. Just to give a bit of an injury update, of course, we'll be getting more details throughout the day, but I would expect Karis LeVert to play here. They said that he was out for rest, and then they quickly changed that to an injury term right away. But I feel like they needed to do that in case he wanted to sit out a second game. I feel like they're pretty much going to knock on his hotel room and say, "Hey, do you feel like playing today?" They're going to take that kind of approach with them locked out of playoffs and basically waiting to go home to their families. A guy like Joe Harris is actually injured, so it's possible that Joe Harris is in play. But Jaren Allen was a guy that was sat out purely for rest. The Brooklyn Nets did not hide that. So if there's one out of the three that I'd be not necessarily extremely confident, but the most confident in saying that he will play, that would be Jaren Allen. And if he does, I absolutely do not mind being overweight on Jared Allen compared to the field. At 5,400, he's going to get virtually every single touch, every single usage percentage that he can with the roster, the shape that it's in right now. And he would be the guy that I'm targeting from Brooklyn. And over on Boston, Kemba Walker did see his minutes rise gradually throughout the games. He started out at around 15 to 17 minute restrictions. Then he went up to 21, 22. And then we saw in their last game, he went up to around 25 to 30 in terms of what they announced before lock, right? So given that they're on a back-to-back, I feel like they're going to be precautious with him. I don't foresee them saying, okay, we've taken a bigger step every game. Now he's ready for a full 36. especially on a back-to-back. So a guy like Marcus Smart is someone that's going to see more minutes. Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, and Jason Tatum all see usage bumps, right? So I can see someone targeting one of the Boston guys. Personally, I would go with one of Jaylen Brown or Gordon Hayward, depending on how your lineup construction works. If you need a forward, you go with Gordon Hayward. If you need a guard, you could go with Jaylen Brown. Tatum is a little bit expensive for my liking in this game.
I love it, man. I love it. And that's a breakdown. And that's why we have Ghost come in, and he gives us all the information. He gives us all the news, and we appreciate the hell out of him. Ghost, where can everybody find you on the internet?
At DFS_Ghost on Twitter, and of course over at Win Daily Sports in our Discord channel, hopping around everywhere. You guys can find us all there.
Hopping around the Discord channel. Make sure to go to windailysports.com if you want to win some money with us with sports betting, with daily fantasy sports. As you just heard over the last half hour, Ghost knows what the hell he's talking about, and that Kelly Olynyk play just keeps looking better and better and better. And actually,
I'm trying not to watch right now.
Yeah, man, we'll see what happens. But make sure come to windailysports.com/learn daily. We'll give you a 3-day free trial to everything. You get Discord, you get the articles, you get Ghost's projection model here for the NBA, as well as all of our other stuff. But we're here to help you. You can find me at Michael Rasile1 on Twitter. Make sure to follow us at Win Daily Sports. Again, windailysports.com/learn daily for 3 free days. So thank you all very much, and we hope you make it a very profitable NBA night.